I still remember the silence of my mailbox. Every neighbor on my street had received glossy envelopes tied with golden ribbon, yet mine stayed empty. When I finally asked my mother about it, her words pierced me sharper than any knife. "Sorry, dear. This wedding is only for the people we actually love." My father chuckled in the background, his voice heavy with ridicule. "Some people just don't belong at family celebrations." Finally, a wedding without the family disappointment. And then my aunt, never missing her chance to twist the blade, added smugly, "Real family only means real family." That was the moment it became undeniable. I was not invited to my own brother's wedding. Not because of distance, not because of logistics, but because they decided I did not belong. My name is Madison Cole. I am 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the scapegoat of my family. At birthdays, I was invisible. At Christmas dinners, I was the afterthought. Every success of mine was met with silence. Every mistake magnified like a crime. Still, part of me had hoped that maybe this time, for my brother's biggest day, I would be seen as worthy. That hope shattered with those venom-laced words. I tried to steady my breath, but my chest burned as if rejection itself had settled there. They had made their choice, and their choice was to erase me. My brother's wedding was supposed to be a celebration of love. But for me, it became a reminder of the love I was never given. So, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I refused to let them see me break. I told myself I would not sit in that house surrounded by laughter that excluded me. Instead, I would write my own story. What happens when the one they cast aside decides not to beg for a seat at their table, but to walk away entirely? What happens when the family's so-called disappointment chooses freedom instead of humiliation? This is where my story begins. When the wedding day approached, I refused to sit in my apartment drowning in bitterness. Instead, I opened my laptop, searched for flights, and bought a ticket without hesitation. If my family didn't want me at their celebration, then I would create my own. I chose New Orleans, Louisiana, a city I had dreamed of visiting since childhood. Known for its jazz-filled streets, Mardi Gras parades, and food that warms the soul, it felt like the perfect antidote to rejection. When my plane touched down, the air itself seemed alive, humid and fragrant with spices drifting from street vendors. While they toasted with champagne back home, I walked along cobblestone paths, brass bands playing on corners, strangers smiling with a warmth I had never known in my own house. I ate gumbo in a small restaurant lit only by candlelight. The flavors bold, comforting, unapologetically rich. At night, I leaned over the balcony of my hotel, watching the Mississippi River shimmer under the moonlight. I told myself over and over, they cannot hurt me if I'm not there to be hurt. And yet, even in the middle of paradise, pain lingered. Their words echoed in my head, cruel and unforgettable. Still, something inside me shifted. For the first time, distance gave me clarity. If I was truly the family's disappointment, then why had they leaned on me so often? Why was it always my money that covered overdue bills, my effort that patched their mistakes? They had painted me as irrelevant, but in reality, I had been their hidden backbone all along. And I didn't realize it then, but this trip would become more than an escape. It would be the beginning of their downfall, and my liberation. It was on my third evening in New Orleans when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was just another friend commenting on the travel photos I had posted online. But the screen lit up with a name I hadn't expected. My brother. The message was frantic. "Wedding canceled. We need you. Please help." I froze. My eyes scanned the words again and again until they blurred. My family, the very people who had erased me from their picture-perfect event, were now begging me to save it. I sat back in my chair, the jazz music from the street below suddenly distant, muffled by the irony ringing in my ears. One by one, the messages poured in. From my mother. "Madison, we were just joking. You know you belong with us. Please, you have to help us fix this." From my father. "It's just money. Families help each other. Don't be stubborn." And from Aunt Lydia, if you cared about your brother at all, you wouldn't let his big day fall apart. A week ago, I had been the disappointment, the unwanted shadow. And now, suddenly, I was their lifeline. When I finally answered one of their calls, it was my brother's voice, shaky, pleading. "Maddie, please. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. We just need $20,000 to clear the venue debt. Then everything can go ahead as planned." $20,000. The number hung heavy in the air. I actually laughed, a sharp, bitter sound I couldn't hold back. Funny, I thought I wasn't real family silence on the other end. And then quietly, "I didn't mean it like that." But he had. They all had. I ended the call and sat in my hotel room, staring at the glow of the city lights outside. I thought of all the times before. Slipping cash into my father's account when the electricity bill was overdue, paying my mother's credit card by mistake, pretending not to notice when my contributions vanished without gratitude. For years, I had been their invisible safety net. And now, when the facade of wealth they had built for this wedding collapsed, they reached for me once again. But something had changed. I wasn't the little girl desperate for approval anymore. I wasn't the scapegoat who would bend until I broke. I had found peace in the streets of a city filled with strangers who treated me with more kindness than my own blood. Their desperation wasn't surprising. It was predictable. They had always expected me to hold them together from the shadows. But this time, the cracks in their foundation would stay open. As I put my phone face down on the nightstand, I realized the truth. Their so-called celebration had never been about love. It had always been about appearances, about showing the world a picture-perfect family that never existed. And without me to patch their lies with money, the illusion would finally shatter. By the time I returned home from my trip, my phone was overflowing with unanswered calls and unread messages. Each voicemail carried a different strategy: pleading, guilt-tripping, even outright threats. My mother's voice came first, trembling with exaggerated sobs. "Madison, please, we didn't mean it. We were under so much stress. You're our daughter. Of course you belong. Just don't punish us now." Punish. That word lingered in my mind. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply absent, the same way they had made me absent at every important milestone of my life. Then came my father's voice, stern and commanding. "Enough games. You have the money, we know you do. Family pulls together in times like this." Step Up, his tone carried the same authority he had always used to silence me, but this time it fell flat. Later that evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Aunt Lydia standing there, her eyes darting nervously, her voice coated in false sweetness. "Madison, sweetheart, your brother is heartbroken. You don't want this on your conscience. Imagine the shame if the wedding doesn't happen." I tilted my head, studying her face. "Imagine the shame," I replied softly, "when your words about real family are the reason I'm not interested." Her lips parted, but no defense came. She turned and left quickly, her heels clicking like retreating gunfire down the hallway. Finally, my brother called again. His tone was different now, desperation breaking through his pride. "Maddie, I know we hurt you, but you don't understand. If this wedding doesn't happen, we lose everything. Our reputation, our standing. People will think we're a joke." I let the silence stretch before answering. "You thought I was a joke first? Remember Mom's words, Dad's laugh, Aunt Lydia's little speech about real family? That wasn't just a mistake. That was what you all believed." His breath caught. "We were wrong. But apologies aren't currency. They don't erase years of humiliation. They don't repay the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't enough. They don't undo the countless times I saved them financially without so much as a thank you." That night, instead of replying, I poured myself a glass of wine and posted another photo from my trip. Me standing against a blazing sunset, free and unbothered. My caption read, "Sometimes exclusion is the gift. Sometimes distance is the cure. And sometimes the wedding that wasn't meant for you was never meant to happen at all. By morning, the likes and comments poured in. Friends applauded my strength. Strangers echoed my pain. Meanwhile, my family's panic only grew louder. But for the first time in my life, I felt quiet inside. I had finally stopped being their savior, and in that silence, I discovered my power. By the fourth day, their panic had turned into chaos. The wedding planner pulled out, vendors refused service, and whispers began to spread across town. In small communities, news travels faster than truth, and soon everyone knew. The Cole family can't even pay their bills. The perfect image my parents had spent years polishing began to crumble in public. Neighbors whispered behind grocery aisles, friends backed out of travel plans, and relatives quietly distanced themselves. The reputation my father once guarded so fiercely slipped away like sand through clenched fists. The venue issued a polite but firm statement. Due to unpaid balances, the Cole reservation has been canceled. It was posted online for anyone to see. Within hours, the announcement spread across social media, accompanied by speculation and gossip. From the quiet of my apartment, I scrolled through the fallout with a steaming mug of coffee in hand. My brother's fiancé posted vague captions about betrayal and broken promises. My mother, who once flooded her Facebook with curated family moments, suddenly went silent. My father looked like a ghost in the background of a photo someone had snapped at the local hardware store. And me? I felt lighter than I had in years. For so long, I had carried their burdens. Financial, emotional, even reputational. Always invisible, always unacknowledged. Now, for the first time, they were forced to face the consequences without me as their safety net. It wasn't revenge fueled by rage. It was justice carved from silence. As the community gossiped, I simply sat back, watching the illusion collapse. The same voices that once told me I didn't belong were now echoing in the ears of everyone else, exposing the hollowness of their pride. I didn't celebrate their downfall with gloating. Instead, I allowed myself a long exhale, realizing I was finally free. Not just from their expectations, but from the weight of always being the one to fix what they had broken. In the weeks that followed, the calls and messages slowed, not because my family had found peace, but because pride was their last weapon. My mother sent one final text. "You've embarrassed us enough. I hope you're happy." My father followed with something colder. "Don't bother coming back." "You made your choice." I read them both twice, waiting for the familiar sting. But nothing came. No ache, no guilt, only clarity. They hadn't disowned me because I was cruel. They had disowned me because I had stopped being useful. Meanwhile, my life moved forward. Work thrived, my savings remained untouched, and my circle of friends widened with people who valued me not for what I gave, but for who I was. One Friday night, I attended a small gathering with coworkers. We laughed freely, no comparisons, no invisible role for me to play. Just warmth. Walking home under the glow of city lights, I realized something vital. The family I had been chasing all my life wasn't the one I was born into. It was the one I was building. Still, I couldn't resist one final post. A table full of friends, glasses raised, smiles genuine and unforced. My caption read, "Real family isn't defined by invitations. It's defined by love." And tonight, I finally felt it. Within minutes, the comments lit up. Dozens of people shared their own stories of exclusion, their voices echoing mine. And somewhere, in that darkened house filled with silence, I knew my parents saw it too. The same silence they once used to erase me had become their punishment. A silence filled with my absence, my growth, my joy beyond their reach. They had tried to cut me out, but in doing so, they only cut their own lifeline. I was no longer the disappointment. I was the survivor, the woman who built her own table, one where love never came with conditions. And that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge. If you've ever been cast aside, tell me your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes the stories we tell are the bridges that set others free.